You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Let's move on to Bellator this weekend. There's some guy named Tito Ortiz in the main event?
There is.
Never heard of him.
As a matter of fact, it's two bad people. It's a bad boy and a bad guy.
The American Gangster.
The Huntington Beach bad boy.
I'm just overwhelmed with the amount of things that I've been asked to do for this card. So, to me, I'm about ready for it to be over. Like, I've been writing about this for like 4 months now for Mania. Just let these two guys get in there and get it over with.
I don't think I've seen a fight like this where, when it was first announced, people were excited about it, and there was a lot of really good trash talking going back and forth when it was first announced, and the hype for this show has just gone down a steep incline. Like, it's not. There's way less interest in this fight now than when it was first announced, in my opinion. The promos that they've been doing on each other were just so bad. The ones on TV. Chael's a good promoter, but Tito is. I don't know what he's doing. I still think it's going to draw a good rating, but I'm definitely less interested in this than I was when it was first announced. I don't know what you guys think.
I'm just trying to figure out, Tito said this is his last fight, and I'm trying to look into the future here after this fight, win or lose. I mean, Sonnen, he's getting up there in age. I'm not sure how many fights he has left, so is this going to be, this is his first fight in Bellator, would this be his biggest fight in Bellator?
Biggest? Well, that would be hard to argue that there would be much bigger other than him getting the fight with Wanderlei Silva that he keeps swearing is going to happen someday, some point, and he thinks it'll happen in a Bellator cage. So, good luck trying to get that one put together, because they certainly couldn't do it before. They tried 2 or 3 times in UFC and it always fell apart. So, I'm not confident. Go ahead, Paul.
I'm not sure that's a bigger fight, though. To MMA hardcores for sure, but Tito Ortiz is a way bigger name than Wanderlei Silva. To casuals.
I'm not going to argue that it's not a bigger name in Tito Ortiz, but I'm going to argue that to Sonnen personally, Wanderlei Silva would be bigger.
Oh yeah. No, you're right. You're not wrong there.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the credentials here, they're pretty impressive for both sides. There's a lot of, history, these guys. Tito, obviously, UFC Hall of Famer. You could make the argument for Chael Sonnen one day being in the Hall of Fame if they ever repair that bridge between himself and the UFC, but, you gotta think, as far as Sonnen's career goes, this is probably going to be his second biggest fight or third biggest fight of his career after the Anderson Silva fights.
Yeah, that's probably accurate. I could see I would have a hard time thinking that they wouldn't give him another fight if he beats Ortiz. Whether it's against Rampage or somebody of that level, kind of like a non-contender but a big name. I don't think you want to put him in against Phil Davis, although
no,
Sonnen has talked about that, and I definitely don't want to see him against King Mo.
That would just be weird, though. I never thought of the King Mo Sonnen fight. That's weird. I'd rather see that than any more Gabby Gonzalez fights. That just sounds, I'm just trying to figure out, Sonnen. Sonnen Rampage. I think that's probably their next move, but Bellator's proven anything is possible.
Well, let's look at the way Sonnen has promoted himself since he came in. The very first thing he said to anybody on any conference call was, "I'm on a Legends ass-kicking tour." So what sense does it make to put him in there with the top dogs of the division? Let him do exactly what he said. Let him fight legends. Let him fight people who aren't contending for the title.
Yeah. I'm scratching my head to think of any other light heavyweights or middleweights. Stefan Bonner, maybe, he's still around, I would imagine. But I think eventually what I would do with Chael is, settle him into, honestly, the kind of the same part of Scott Coker's role, kind of the face promoter. Scott Coker could put the belts together behind the scenes, but then Chael's the one out there making the announcements and hyping up the fights. That's what he's good at.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like Rich Franklin in one?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I could see that for sure. Now, let's move on to Paul Daley and Brendan Ward. This fight is very intriguing to me. I don't know about you, Stevie.
This fight is probably not going to last a full 5 minutes.
Gee, I wonder why.
I can tell you why. You don't have to wonder. You're looking at two fighters who are absolutely just going to throw caution to the wind and throw fists at each other and see who falls down first.
What about you, Paul? Is it Rock'em Sock'em Robots?
Probably. I mean, Brendan Ward, has he had a fight go out of the first round in years? I'd have to look at his record. I mean, Daley's had some boring fights, but I can't see this being one of them. I think Stevie's right, and I think whoever comes out of this, you want to get them in, make as much out of it as you can and get them in a title fight, unless they can somehow, if Josh Koscheck is ever going to fight again. I mean, either way, as soon as he can fight, you got to put him against Daley.
Mm-hmm.
Is Koscheck the same thing as Rashad Evans, where the doctors won't let him fight?
I think Koscheck is, as Daley has alluded to himself, doing pretty well in his business interests outside of fighting, so I don't think Koscheck really has that much desire to fight. I think the least little injury for him to pull out of a fight, he's going to, because he doesn't really need to fight anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I mean, he signed with Bellator, but, and I'm sure he intended to fight at the time, but he got injured and he's getting old, and I don't think it's a case of him not being able to be cleared. I haven't heard that in regards to him. I think it's more just that he's just not ready to fight. And, who knows, maybe never will be. I mean, remember, they've signed a bunch of guys. They signed Chris Lieben, and they signed Sergey Karatanov, and then he didn't fight for a year and a half and got knocked out in 10 seconds. And we haven't seen him since. So, they make a lot of weird moves. Well, I just looked up Brendan Ward, and he's had one fight in his career that hasn't been a finish. And almost all of them have been first round, so I think that's going to be a quick fight.
And the only fight in the last 2 years or so that went to the second round wasn't even in Bellator. It was in Rising.
Yes. Yeah, and he won that one. So yeah, I favor Ward in that fight. I think. Daley has always been a little more hype than quality to me, and I think Ward is probably going to stop him in the first round.
See, as much as I would be tempted to agree with you because Ward is the younger fighter with more of an upside, the punching power of Daley only requires one shot, whereas Ward, he'll overwhelm you with his offense because he's just buck wild and crazy, but Daley can lay anybody on his ass with just one shot.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, and Ward can be stopped. I mean, we saw Tamden McCrory kill him in like 20 seconds. He lost to Santos by submission. I don't really think too much of Daley's submission game, but yeah, he's definitely got a packs a punch.
Now, Stevie, is there any animosity between these two fighters, or are they just fighting out of respect and there's no real hatred here?
I certainly haven't gotten any inclination of beef from talking to either one of them. In fact, I think if anything, they both like this fight because they get the kind of opponent that they want. It's a stylistic match that they love.
Okay, so you're saying we're not going to go to the scorecards for this one?
No, very little chance.
All right, so let's move on to Gracie and Kato. Paul, what do you think?
Well, Kato is he is another one. I mean, it's he's like Brendan Ward. He's a highlight reel. Just power guy. He's either going to stop you or he's going to be stopped. I mean, there's no other way that fight's going to go. Kickboxer, looked really good in his last couple fights. I think that, beating AJ Matthews was, he kind of had to, 'cause otherwise, I don't know if Bellator would have used him again. Howlett Gracie, I think I've only seen him once, so I don't really have much of an opinion on him. I don't know if Stevie, if you're a little more familiar with him.
Well, yeah, I can give you a few things about him. He's 3-0. His last fight was almost 7 years ago now, and that was against
Yeah.
Kazushi Sakuraba. So
Yeah, and that's the one I saw.
in fact, 2 out of his 3 fights have been against pro wrestlers, because one of his other wins was
Shibata.
yes, indeed, the former never openweight champion for New Japan. So it seems like you could poke holes in Alec Gracie's record if you wanted to, because he is 3-0, but that's 7 years removed, and 2 of his fights were against guys who weren't full-time pro fighters. So there is that, but then you look at the Gracie name and the Gracie family and the fact that they're jiu-jitsu experts, and he runs his own jiu-jitsu promotion called Metamoris. And you gotta think, even though you might not totally believe in his MMA game, you gotta believe in the fact that if he can get Kato off his feet, Kato might be in big trouble.
So,
you just said, sorry to cut you off, Paul, but
no, that's fine.
Stevie, you just said if a Gracie can get you off your feet, you're in trouble. I'm shocked. Like, that's like...
I know, Captain Obvious on line 1, right? I know.
Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but I mean, I guess the key is, can he? And that's the thing, like, how would he get him to his feet? Because if he tries to take him down, he's going to get knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's going to get hit, whether he gets knocked out or not. I mean, and the fact that he hasn't fought in 7 years, I mean, he's only 31 years old. So it's hard to make any kind of judgment. Again, I haven't seen Metamoris. I don't know if has he fought in Metamoris, or does he just run it? Like, I don't even know.
He's actually had some matches in Metamoris, and the last one I recall him having, he didn't win.
Okay, there you go. And there's no striking allowed to the head in Metamoris, right?
Right. It's all grappling and submissions,
Yeah.
and if nobody scores, then it's a draw.
Right. So, I mean, is he going to be prepared for this? And you're going in there against a kickboxer who, is, pretty lethal striker. So, I guess it's going to come down to whether or not he's got a chin. And he's 31 and he hasn't taken a lot of punishment. You never know. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, if he gets him to the ground, there's no chance. Like, so it's either going to be a submission or a KO for Kato, right? And that's...
I hate to do this, and I'm swearing on a stack that Paul was not setting me up by saying who has he been in there with, but coincidentally, if you go to MMA Mania right now, I have an interview up with King Kevin Casey, and he talks about the fact that he trained with Alec Gracie before this fight. So he is actually working with some strikers and some guys that will go in there and do some damage. And of course, this is not saying that Casey is the greatest striker in the world, but I mean, he's got more in his arsenal than the fact that he's friends with Hicks and Gracie. I would not want to stand in trade with King Casey, and I don't know many people that would.
No,
well, I think if King Casey stood and traded with Kato, he's probably getting knocked out.
Now that I would agree with, because I'm still picking Kato to win this fight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what about Karakhanyan and Sanchez, Stevie?
This one is interesting on multiple levels. First of all, I feel like we're in a career resurgence right now for Karakhanyan, because he was on a little bit of a bad run there for a while with losing 3 out of 4, and then he caught Bubba Jenkins for the second time. First time he froze him with a guillotine choke. Second time he just flat out KO'd him after he caught a kick. And then I guess you wouldn't call it a great fight because it ended with a shoulder injury, but 2 wins in a row for Karakhanyan suggests that, 1 or 2 more and he's right back in the mix to contend for a title. The problem is, Emmanuel Sanchez is a guy who knows how to frustrate good fighters. In fact, his record for 3 out of his last 4 fights is taking guys to the judges and getting a split decision, and the only time that didn't work out for him was against the Weasel Daniel Feischl. So, Sanchez is a guy who will outpoint you, but not necessarily beat you down and make you humble. He will find ways to outscore you by doing a little more than you.
No, I mean, when it comes to Karakhanyan, I think he should win this fight. Now, air quotes, should win this fight. But, I mean, Sanchez, sometimes I like to go to the cliche of house money, but, I mean, I would not be surprised if Sanchez wins here, but I think it's a fight that Karakhanyan should win.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that.
If it goes to the judges, though,
Don't start. Oh,
that's where Sanchez is the most dangerous, is when those judges give their scorecards.
when I hear judges now, it's like I'm like the quarterback for the Cowboys. I can't even look at the field goal kick. I don't want to look. I don't want to look. Like I don't want to. You know what I mean? It's like I'm dreading what it possibly could be, because when it goes to the judges, anything is possible now.
I only dread it when the fight is close. If the guy's been dominant in every round, I don't worry about it.
And then we get 30-27, 27-30, and you're winner by split decision. Ah, crap. Now, what about the last fight on the main card here? Derek Anderson and Derek Campos. Stevie?
Well, these are two guys that are looking for a third straight win in the lightweight division, and coincidentally enough, one of them was originally set to face Paul Daley last year until he had that really bad weight cut and made the weight, but then was too sick to fight afterward. So instead of a welterweight fight between Daley and Anderson, now we've got a lightweight fight between Anderson and Campos. And each of these guys is really looking to solidify a claim to be the next guy to face Mike Chandler. Only, as I said to Anderson when I interviewed him, I think there's a little matter of Josh Thompson standing in the way, because he still wants that fight with Chandler, and Chandler still wants that fight with him.
Yeah, honestly, other than the main event, this is the fight I'm most looking forward to on this card. Other than actually some of the prelims, but these two guys, it's amazing they've never fought each other, because they've both been kind of kicking around the bottom half of the top 10 in Bellator, and they're just kind of the guy you beat to move up to the next fight, to fight for a title kind of thing. And and if you lose to them, then you go to the back of the line. They're both gatekeepers, and now they're one of them is probably going to step up after this. And obviously unless they do the Thompson Chandler match, but I mean, you got to think, if whichever one of these guys wins is probably maybe one more fight away from a title shot.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
See, I would say that, it's great that a fighter, like you're in mixed martial arts, you're fighting for the opportunity to fight for a title, but in this between these two fighters, it's like, great, you win the fight, your prize, Michael Chandler. That's my prize. Pass. I'll let the Punk happen first. Like, what do you want me to say here? Like, that's a very tough fight. I don't care who you are. Chandler's one of the top fighters in the world at that weight class. Like, Campos or Anderson, I mean, they're both great fighters, but I mean, we all know that, anything can happen once that door closes. We all know that. We've all seen that. But I would rather see a Chandler Punk rematch, and then the winner of that gets the winner of this fight.
Yeah, I'd love to see Chandler in there against CM Punk too.
Oh.
I know what you meant, Peter.
He gotcha.
Right into that
Zing, he gotcha.
But no, I really would. On so many levels.
Okay, well, just out of curiosity, let's kick that one around for a second. What are the chances that CM Punk ever ends up fighting in Bellator?
Oh.
I don't think, I think he'll fight in the UFC again. I guess never say never, but I wouldn't bet money on it.
I think there's more of a chance of him fighting in Bellator than him ever going in the WWE Hall of Fame.
I'd agree.
I wouldn't take money on him going in the Hall, not unless Vince McMahon dies.
Vince,
and
Triple H.
Aurora.
Oh, yeah, it might take 2 generations removed before this ever happens.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to CM Punk and Beltre, money talks, and if UFC, I'd like to see him have one more fight in UFC to really prove his mettle, to see if that, that fight wasn't a 10-second, okay, it wasn't a fluke, but you know what I'm trying to say here. It's like, you really can't judge someone's fight potential with that short amount of fight time. If he lasted 1, maybe 2 rounds, we can get a better idea of what he's capable of. He just got smoked.
Peter, I don't know if I ever mentioned it, and I'll say this to both of you. Did you guys see the meme that went around after Ronda Rousey's last fight with CM Punk smiling and saying, "I lasted longer than you"?
No, I didn't, but that sounds funny.
It was. It cracked me up anyway. But go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, we really don't know how good Mickey Gall is. Like, honestly, like, he could be a top 15 fighter, right?
Mhm.
So, and if you're putting CM Punk, if you're measuring CM Punk on one fight against a top 15 guy, is that really fair? Or do you put him up against a guy with a similar, it's hard to say a similar experience level, because, Gall did have a similar experience level, but a similar skill level. And really, if you're doing that, well, it's not really a UFC fight, so you're just handpicking an opponent. Like, so you're going to go out and get, like, Mike Jackson, again, that fought Mickey Gall in his first fight. Yeah, I think CM Punk would actually have a good chance against a guy like that. But that's not a UFC fight. And, and the rumors going, like, I don't think there's anybody on the roster right now that you could favor CM Punk against. But I think there's guys that you could put him in against where he wouldn't look as bad as he did against Mickey Gall. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm thinking of the guy that, that Sage Northcutt beat at UFC 200, who I believe has been cut now. But, a guy like that, who, Northcutt didn't look very good in that fight, but he won. So someone like that, Punk might at least be competitive with,
You're talking about Enrique Marin, by the way.
Yeah.
That was the guy. And he was cut.
I'm just trying to figure out, like, Mickey Gall, he's fought CM Punk and Sage Northcutt.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's put him up against someone maybe a top 15 fighter, just see what his true mettle is here.
Well, and I think that's what you're going to get next.
I hope so.
Honestly,
UFC...
going into that Gall Northcutt fight, I think there were still some people who believed that Northcutt might be a real fighter, but he got so badly exposed in the last fight before that, and then he got dominated by Gall so thoroughly that now it's like, okay, Gall's had 2 fights with guys that weren't on his level.
Yeah, but Northcutt, he's 20 years old, and he's got time. He won. He beat guys. He knocked them out. They're probably not very good, but he won, and I don't think you can close the door on him by any stretch. But I think he's definitely got some rehabilitation to do. And I've seen, there's rumors, there with this Tough Redemption and one cast member or one current UFC roster member on the show. Everyone's talking about CM Punk. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Sage Northcutt.
Mm.
That might not be a bad idea. Yeah, get some TV ratings and and give him a chance to rehab his career.
And he definitely needs to change up his training, because just working with the people that he does now, like his family, that's not helping him.
No, you've got to go beyond that. That'll get you to a certain level, but it's the same thing with Ronda Rousey. Like loyalty is only going to go so far, and I've seen this with a lot of different fighters. I don't know if either of you two guys are familiar with the name, but Christian Lee's another one that he's training with his dad and his family, and he's 18 years old and he's had 5 pro wins before his 18th birthday, and He's got so much potential, but he got blitzed in his last fight because he's just relying on this coaching that's not going to get him anywhere. Mm-hmm. And and Sage Northcutt, same thing. Like he's relying on his dad, and I thought going to TriStar was a great move, but he didn't last there, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Where's he fighting out of? What city?
Who, Christian Lee?
Yeah.
He's with the One promotion.
Okay.
So he's with Evolve MMA in Singapore.
Okay. Yeah.
And his sister is Angela Lee, who is their atomweight champion, mm-hmm. and she's got a bit of buzz. She's 20. They were both born in Canada, but they moved out to Southeast Asia when they were kids.
Okay.
And they both got. I always go out of my way to watch their fights. They're very charismatic, and I think they got a future. But it just and that's the talk I hear about them as well. Just that they're so loyal to their family and to their family's friends that at some point you've got to go beyond that, or you're just not going to go anywhere.
Now, did you guys see the story of Floyd Mayweather offering to train Ronda Rousey in striking?
Oh God.
No, but yeah.
That's right up there with the $25 million offer and Floyd laughing at it.
But you know what? Honestly, you could do a lot worse than training to strike with Floyd Mayweather, because at least he would teach you how to avoid getting hit, because he's pretty good at that.
Well, unless they train with 4-ounce gloves in boxing.
Yeah, but I'm sure whatever size gloves he uses with her, she could learn more from him than she's learning from Tarbedian.
Mm.
That's a hell of a strategy. Don't get hit.
Yeah.
If somebody could have told her that before the last fight, maybe she'd be challenging for the title next.
She definitely needs to learn something about getting out of the way of a punch, whether it's Holly Holm or Amanda Nunes. She needs to learn it.
Yeah. Clinch! Clinch! Clinch!
Yeah, that's gotta be the worst corner advice I've ever heard.
I said it last week. Your advice to your fighter was to walk through the punches, clinch the fighter, and throw them down. So you're walking through the punches for Amanda Nunes. She hits like a ton of bricks. Are you sure that's a bright idea? Maybe shoot for a takedown, surprise everybody.
Well, the funny thing is when I was going to make my pick on this fight, like, I was going over in my head, like, there's a really good case for Ronda. She's been focused on this fight. She's got, she wants redemption. And Nunes, on the other hand, is obviously a superior striker, and her path to victory was pretty clear. She's got to blitz Ronda. And so as you're playing it out in your mind, how's this fight going to go? The one thing that you thought, okay, if Ronda does this, she has no chance. And that's exactly what her game plan was, which, I mean, I could figure that out. So I would hope that her coaching could, but I mean, she quite possibly might have the worst coach in MMA.
It's hard to argue otherwise right now. If she's ever going to have another fight, which I'm not convinced of, she needs to go work with anybody else. Anybody.
Well, let's transition to the one news item I have circled on my list here, and there's someone that could train her now that he's retiring, and that is Tim Kennedy.
Yeah, hung up his gloves, said he'd call it a day, thanked all his previous opponents, thanked UFC. I mean, it was a pretty long post on Facebook. I can't imagine one person he didn't thank.
Yeah, I mean, he had a career. He didn't look very good in his last fight. Took a lot of punishment in the fight before that, so can't say I'm surprised. I'm not the biggest Tim Kennedy fan in the world, but I respect his military service. Obviously, very outspoken fighter. I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe gets involved in trying to get some sort of a union together or something like that. Seems like something he'd do.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he would see him in commentary?
I hope not.
No, because I'm just thinking, imagine a UFC fight night with Kennedy and Stan.
No, that would almost be overkill. And honestly, Stan is already so good that you don't need to put him in gimmicks like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I say that because I don't really like him, but I mean, I haven't heard him do commentary, so it's, that's probably not a fair assessment. I mean, most of these guys that they hire, are pretty good. And they seem to be doing that a little bit more lately. Cormier was on for the last show. They've had Dom Cruz do it. There's a few other guys that I think could do it. Lawler could probably do it.
There were a couple of awkward moments, though, during the UFC fight night when Anik would throw to Cormier, and Cormier wouldn't say anything for like 40 or 50 seconds. I'm like, what's going on here? Why isn't he answering the question?
Yeah, that's just an experience, right?
What about Grisham's performance?
On the post-fight show?
Yeah, how was that? Was that a good first outing?
I didn't see much of it. Steve, did you?
No, that's why I was keeping silent, because I didn't see it at all.
Oh, I just caught the very beginning, but I mean, he seemed, he didn't stand out either way. So I think it definitely wasn't a negative.
No, from what I saw, and it's an apt comparison. I think he was just a guy.
Yeah. And that's fine. I mean, I think that's what you want in that position, right?
Yeah.
You don't really want a guy that's the fighters are the draw, right? And you want to, just kind of be there, steer the ship, and let the, the fighters who really, I don't think anybody really cares what, if it's John Anik in that role or Jake Glazier or, Karen Bryant, people really don't care what they have to say for the most part. Like, it's not, I don't mean that to sound negative. It's just that's not their role.
It's not like they're as useless as the robot who does the interviews backstage in WWE. I can't think of her name because I think of her as a robot every time she speaks.
Dasha?
Yeah, Dasha.
Oh, okay.
That's the one. She is so wretched. She can't steer a ship. She can't even steer her own direction. She has to be programmed which way to go.
I thought you were talking about
Well,
Caruso.
Oh, she's not. She has
Caruso
her
I can
moments.
take. Caruso I'm okay with.
You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.